The Echo Killer. They called me in when the third body turned up. I had been on sabbatical, burnout, divorce, whiskey, but murder doesn't wait for mental health. This killer had a signature, and the media, like vultures over a corpse, were already branding him. The Echo Killer. Each victim found in a different part of the city. No connection between them, no forced entry, no signs of struggle, just a single chilling detail, a cassette tape beside each corpse, playing static. Yes, cassette tapes. Outdated tech for a very modern killer. But when we played them, one after another, they all carried something beneath the static. Faint breathing, murmurs, and in one, laughter. I met with the lead detective, Ramos, at the precinct. He was younger, sharper, still clung to the illusion that cases could be solved neatly. "You're the profiler," he said. "You tell me, what kind of psycho uses cassette tapes?" "The kind that wants attention," I said, "or the kind that wants to be misunderstood." The third victim was a middle-aged librarian, found at home, her door locked from the inside. No sign of tampering. We looked at the tape left next to her body, track 3 scribbled in red Sharpie. And I requested all 3 tapes together. I played them in order. Static, 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 then faintly a sentence. "I am the echo." I played it again. It wasn't just a random line, it was perfectly timed, like a ritual. The deeper I went, the more disturbed I felt. This wasn't just about murder, this was about performance, about art, about legacy. Then I noticed something everyone else had missed. Each victim had checked out the same book from different branches of the city library. Not the same edition, no, the same physical copy. It had been transferred through interlibrary loan. The title? Sound and Silence, A History of Auditory Illusions. I pulled the checkout records. The book had moved through 6 hands in the last year. 3 of them were now dead. Ramos raised an eyebrow. "You think the book is cursed?" "No," I said. "I think it's bait." The 4th person to check it out was a man named Ellis Dreyer, a sound engineer who worked freelance gigs for true crime podcasts. He lived in a warehouse loft lined with reel-to-reel recorders and vintage microphones. When we got there, he was gone, but he'd left a tape. This one was different, no static, just a clean recording of a woman humming what sounded like a lullaby. Underneath, barely audible, was whispering in reverse. Ramos and I looked at each other. "Play it backward," he said. I did. The reversed voice said, "He listens when they sleep." I felt a chill crawl up my back. We traced Ellis's last gig to a podcast studio across town. The producer remembered him well. Intense, obsessive, but brilliant. He had spoken about capturing the resonance of death, whatever that meant. Then we found security footage. Ellis wasn't alone. The footage showed him entering the studio with a tall man in a gray hoodie. They spoke briefly at the door. No words exchanged, but Ellis handed him something, a cassette. We ran facial recognition, nothing, no match. The man was a ghost. That night I went home, poured a drink, and stared at the tapes. 3 victims, 1 book, now a missing sound engineer, and this ghost, this echo. Then my phone buzzed, no caller ID. I answered, static. Then a voice, software, calm, almost gentle. "I liked your voice, detective. It trembles just the right amount." I froze. "I heard it when you said, 'He wants to be misunderstood.'" Click. I didn't sleep that night. I kept hearing the voice. Not in my head, no. In the walls, in the vents, in the old cassette player sitting across the room, which clicked and whirred as if loading a tape that wasn't there. By morning, Ramos had tracked the gray hoodie ghost to a storage facility in the industrial zone. We rolled up with a warrant and 3 officers, Unit 217. The lock had been cut. Inside there was no furniture, no tools, just stacks, hundreds of tapes, and a single reel-to-reel recorder plugged into a car battery. Each tape was labeled with a name. Most we didn't recognize. A few we did, victims. One stood out, Detective Marcus Hale. That was me. Ramos looked at me. "You okay?" "No," I said, but I hit play, static, then breathing, then my voice from the call last night. "He wants to be misunderstood." Then silence, and a second voice layered underneath, slow, deliberate, not quite human. "You're getting close." I slammed the stop button. My name, my voice, my words, recorded before I said them. Ramos leaned in. "How?" Then the lights died. All of them. In the dark, the tape started again. No one touched it. This time the voice wasn't mine. It was Ellis Dreyer. He watches through speakers, through vibrations. He feeds on resonance. The cops didn't wait. We swept the storage unit. Nothing but more tapes. But when I stepped outside, I noticed something carved into the metal frame of the door. Only visible when light hit at an angle. A line, then another, then a sentence. When the echo becomes louder than the voice dies. I'd read it before, in the book that started it all. I took the book from evidence the same night. Not protocol, but at that point, protocol felt like a ritual dance before a slaughterhouse. Meaningless. The book was titled Echo Variations. Self-published in 1989, out of print, and written by a man named Curtis Wren. Curtis Wren disappeared in 1991. He was a musicologist of all things, obsessed with sound, vibration, harmony. The book was less theory, more prophecy, rambling pages about resonant entities, auditory hauntings, and sonic convergence points. A madman's poetry, until I read chapter 9. They do not manifest in mirrors. They do not crawl from wells. They arrive through the whisper loop, by repetition. They feed on voice print. They wear our cadence like a mask. Ellis Dreyer had underlined those lines. In blood, maybe. The ink had turned a rotten brown. The next page, torn out. I was staring at a pattern. Wren, Dreyer, me, all connected by audio, all pulled into the same silent scream. 2 days later, I was home, headphones on, reviewing the tapes. One caught my attention. Label, Mother. I didn't remember that one. I played it. At first, nothing but hum. Then a whisper, Marcus. I froze. That was her voice, my mother's. She died in 2003. Marcus, I'm so sorry. I didn't know what he was. I didn't know he would stay. I ripped the headphones off. Heart hammering, I rewound and played it again. Same voice, same apology. Only she never called him he, not my father, not anyone. It. I searched every box, every log, trying to trace the origin of the tape. No luck. Ramos thought I was losing it. Maybe I was, but I kept digging. Then came the break. A librarian from the old university campus where Wren had lectured reached out. She'd found an audio diary. His last. I went to meet her. The library was abandoned, shut down after asbestos was found in the ventilation. She gave me a dusty recorder and a single reel marked Wren Final. We played it in the stacks among collapsed shelves and moldy encyclopedias. His voice crackled through the silence. It mimics us. That's how it hunts. Through what we say, what we repeat. It lives in recordings now and we let it. Every podcast, every voicemail, every lullaby, it travels farther, broader, it echoes. He sounded out of breath. If you're listening, don't say its name. Not out loud, not even in your mind. Just call it the listener. The librarian stopped the tape. Do you know what this means? She asked. I nodded, but I didn't tell her the truth. I'd already said the name. Twice. That night, the voicemail on my phone blinked. New message. I never heard it ring. I hit play, and I heard myself screaming. From a recording I never made, I didn't sleep. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw static. Not the kind on a TV screen. This was living, pulsating, like a swarm of insects trying to form a face. The next morning, I got a call from Ramos. Another body, basement of a condemned radio station on the outskirts of town. WQZR 88.7. Shut down in 1998. No power, no broadcast. But someone had turned the signal back on. Just static. 24 hours. No breaks. We went down. The smell hit first. Mold, rot, copper. Then we saw the body. A woman, early 30s. Eyes missing, ears stuffed with pieces of cassette tape. Her mouth stretched wide open like she died mid-scream. Written in black marker on the wall behind her, "Stop playing it back." I felt cold, not scared, targeted. Ramos was trying to keep it together. He turned to me and said, "You think this is the same thing?" I didn't answer. I looked around and saw an old transmitter still wired up, connected to a car battery, and in the console deck, a tape. Label, Variation 3. That was from Wren's book. 3 variations of The Listener, each one a different frequency, different form. I told Ramos to back out. He didn't listen. He hit play. The room changed. It was like the air turned into jello, thick, charged. The lights flickered, though there was no electricity. And then the voice came through, but not from the speaker. It came from behind us. "You heard me once?" We spun around. Nothing. Then again, closer. "You heard me twice." Ramos dropped the tape, covered his ears. Blood leaked out. I yanked the car battery cable, killing the signal. The voice stopped, but Ramos wouldn't move. He just stood there, mouth open, whispering the same words over and over. "Third time seals the echo. Third time seals the echo. Third time seals the echo." I drove him to the hospital. They ran scans, no physical damage, but his brainwaves looked like they were mirroring something, repeating a pattern like a loop transmission. That was the last time I saw him conscious. They put him under observation. He hasn't spoken since, just mumbles and shivers. I sat outside his room and listened to the recording from my phone again. The voicemail of me screaming. This time I noticed something behind the scream, a whisper. I boosted the audio, slowed it down. The whisper said, "Variation 4 is you." I didn't know what Variation 4 meant. The original manuscript only mentioned 3. Wren had described them as theories, manifestations of auditory hallucinations that somehow crossed into shared perception. But this wasn't theory anymore. I needed answers, and Wren was dead, at least officially. But records can lie, especially in this town. I pulled every thread I could. Library archives, missing persons logs, old FCC complaints, paranormal message boards, audio forums, deep, obsessive rabbit holes. A recurring name kept coming up in fringe circles, one that hadn't appeared in official reports. Dr. Evelyn Sato, a psychoacoustics researcher, partnered with Wren in the mid-90s, worked on auditory threshold manipulation, essentially testing how to program the subconscious through layered sound. She disappeared 2 weeks after Wren's death, or so it seemed. I found her, living off-grid in a cabin 3 hours north, surrounded by broken antennas and dish arrays pointed at nothing. She didn't let me in right away, but when I mentioned the phrase Variation 4, she opened the door without a word. The place reeked of coffee, sweat, and burnt plastic. Every wall was covered in noise cancellation foam, and a dozen reel-to-reel machines were running without spools, just looping the hiss of blank tape. She stared at me, pale, twitchy. "You listened to it, didn't you?" I nodded. Sato lit a cigarette with a trembling hand. "They all think it's the frequency, that there's a sound that causes madness. But it's worse than that. It's a mirror. You don't hear something alien. You hear yourself, but from a layer you weren't supposed to access." I asked her what Variation 4 meant. Her eyes welled with tears. "That's the one that doesn't play through speakers. It plays through people." I froze. She stepped back and said, "You've already been broadcasting." That night back home, I turned everything off. Phone, Wi-Fi, power. I sat in silence for hours, trying not to breathe loud, trying not to think. Then the radio in my closet turned on, a voice quiet but clear. "They're hearing you now." The radio hissed for a moment after the voice, then silence again. I stood frozen, watching the small black box as if it were breathing. No lights, no power. I hadn't touched that radio in years. I didn't even know it still worked. "They're hearing you now." It wasn't a hallucination. The voice wasn't mine. But it spoke with a rhythm I knew too well, almost like a delayed echo of thoughts I hadn't said aloud yet. I yanked the power cord out. Didn't matter. The silence was worse, heavier, I slept in the bathtub that night, clutching a kitchen knife, the radio locked in the trunk of my car. When I returned to Dr. Sato's cabin the next morning, it was abandoned. No sign of her. The machines were all smashed. On the wall, written in what looked like charcoal, Variation 4 is already inside. That was the moment I realized this wasn't about sound. It wasn't even about Ren. It was about transmission. Something had been seeded. A frequency, a phrase, a pattern. And it had jumped from data to mind, then from mind to other minds. Contagious thought, viral cognition. I started seeing it everywhere. Old cassette tapes at flea markets labeled with strange symbols. Street musicians looping short melodies with offbeat repetitions. One of them locked eyes with me as he played and whispered, "You're tuned in." The nightmares came back, only now they weren't mine. I saw flashes of places I'd never been. Industrial tunnels filled with rusted speaker cones, pale children standing in fields, humming the same two notes again and again. A man opening his chest to reveal a reel of magnetic tape, unspooling forever. People on the street began reacting to me strangely, as if they recognized something. Some smiled too long, some crossed themselves. I stopped leaving the house. Then came the bleeding, tiny streams from my ears after I'd sleep, like the signal was leaking. My thoughts weren't staying inside anymore. I'd write things I didn't remember writing, phrases like, "The mic is on," "Transmit or die." They listened through us. I tried going to a neurologist. He listened to my story politely. He wrote things down. When I returned to his office 2 days later, he was gone. His receptionist said there was no record of my appointment. But I found something on his desk, half buried under folders. A sticky note, barely legible. His voice looped. Talking, then again. Talking, then again. That was when I stopped trusting my own recordings. I destroyed every device I owned. Phone, laptop, stereo. But the signal didn't stop. I'd be walking past someone and suddenly hear a phrase from my dreams whispered into a stranger's phone. I saw a kid watching cartoons. One frame flickered with Ren's diagram from the original case file. The signal was piggybacking on sound, on speech, on memory. And the worst part? I'd begun to understand it. The language behind the noise, the pauses, the stutters, the static breaks. It wasn't random. It was coded emotion, a way to translate terror into obedience, pain into silence, guilt into compliance. I was changing, no matter how hard I fought. One night while trying to sleep, I bit into my lip so hard I thought I tore it open. The blood dripped onto my sheets. I stumbled to the bathroom. When I turned on the light, my mouth moved before I spoke. In the mirror, I whispered, "Variation 5 begins now." It happened slowly. I'd convinced myself there was still a chance to reverse it, to scrub the signal out of my head, to forget the patterns, to forget Ren. But the more I fought, the more I fed it. The more I tried to remember who I used to be, the more static bled through those memories. One morning, I woke up and couldn't remember the sound of my mother's voice. Couldn't remember if I had ever actually spoken to Ren face to face, or if that too had been projected. I tried to isolate myself, moved to a cabin in the woods with no power, no devices. I burned every photo, every notebook, every trace of my past. Just trees, wind, silence. It lasted 2 days. On the third morning, I found the diagram carved into the bark of a tree behind the cabin. Not with a knife, but perfectly etched, like with a laser. The same one from Sato's files. The same one Ren used to draw. I ran back inside and vomited. There were lines in the bile, letters. "You're ready." That night, I lit a fire in the middle of the forest and threw everything in. Clothes, bedding, even the paper money in my wallet. I let it all burn while I screamed into the night, screaming until my voice cracked and something else came out. A rasp, a pitch not mine. The next morning I wrote a letter, to no one in particular. Maybe to myself, maybe to Ren, maybe to the next person the signal would crawl into. I sealed it and buried it under a rock. And then I walked into town barefoot, covered in soot. I didn't speak, didn't need to. They were already waiting. A woman at the gas station looked up from her phone as I passed. She didn't blink. She whispered, "You're almost through." I checked into a motel. I stopped eating, stopped sleeping. Just sat there staring at the old TV set, even though it wasn't plugged in. Until one night it turned on. The screen was blank, just gray static. And then it spoke, not with words but with rhythm, with absence, with that old familiar tone, the one that had haunted the recordings, the one Ren heard just before he vanished. I don't remember what happened next. I just know I woke up in a different room. The walls were white, sterile, a single camera blinking red in the corner. I was strapped to a bed. My throat was raw. I asked for a doctor. I asked for help. But they didn't send a doctor. They sent a technician. He didn't introduce himself, just brought a microphone into the room, placed it near my mouth. "Go ahead," he said. "Tell us what you heard." And I did. I told them everything. The loops, the bleeding, the voice, the transformation. I told them about the dreams that weren't mine, the memories that rewrote themselves. He didn't write anything down. He just listened. When I finished, he asked, "Do you know your name?" I hesitated. The name I said didn't sound familiar, but he nodded, satisfied, as if that's what he expected. "Good, Skarn," he said. "We'll try again tomorrow." I've been in this place ever since. No clocks, no windows, just that camera and the questions. Every day they ask me to repeat the story. And I do, but each time I tell it, it's a little different. The names shift, the places twist, and I don't know if it's because I'm forgetting or if I'm becoming the story. There's a mirror in the corner. I can't see myself in it anymore. But sometimes late at night, I hear static coming from behind the glass. And a voice. It says, "Ren, Ren, Ren." Hey guys, please subscribe for more stories. If you have any story, put it in the comments. You could be in a video.